JudgeCast. This is episode 368. I'm one of your hosts, Bryan, and I am joined this evening, afternoon, morning drive to work by the one and only Charles Feather.
Hello, hello.
And the one and only Marcos Sanchez.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Hey, I got a question. What are the two things that are most certain in this world?
Oh, I want to be really glib here, but I'm not gonna.
I was taking a second, and I was trying to come up with something, but I guess that would be death and taxes, right?
Right. Well, that's only one thing. That's a deck, right?
Right. Okay.
Okay, what's the other thing?
It is a good deck.
Amulet Titan always surviving a ban.
Okay.
Oh,
well,
yeah, that's true, too.
Talking about the first, super morbid, not gonna do it. Talking about the second, also kind of morbid, but that is the thing that we're going to be talking about in this episode. Yes, we're going to be talking about taxes and
Hooray!
Judging
I'm
and
excited.
taxes. Yes. Okay. However, Charles, how much do you know about how taxes work?
Okay, I know this. I take that little form that the federal government sends me.
Yep.
I bring it home, and I hand it to my wife, who then works with it a little bit, maybe hands it to the accountant, and then I'm asked to sign something sometime before April 15th. That's what I know.
Okay. Marcos, how about you?
I do my taxes at home, and I cross my fingers every year that somebody from the IRS isn't about to tell me that I'm going to jail.
Yeah. I start collecting receipts and everything, and I'm very, very diligent for like the first 6 months of the year, and then I get progressively lazier and lazier as the year goes on.
Yeah.
And then hate myself. But anyway, all of this is just to say that we are just the video of that donkey around the yard with the rubber chicken. That's us and taxes. It's like we have no idea what we're doing. So in order to talk about this topic intelligently, we had to bring someone from the outside. So welcome our special guest, Patrick Evans. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome, Patrick.
So Patrick is a former level 2 judge. He was a level 2 judge in the Legacy program and is a current tax attorney. So Patrick, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, that's correct. So I've been doing taxes professionally for over a decade now. So lots of experience doing taxes. I've had to do my own taxes when I was a judge and had to do taxes when I had my own solo practice as well. So I'm very familiar with many of the topics that would come up for judges around here.
Excellent. Just what we're looking for.
Sounds like an expert.
And then I do want to give a brief disclaimer is that tax laws do change, so always consult with a tax professional before you rely on anything I'm saying as tax advice, or it's not to be construed as financial advice. It's just kind of for educational purposes. And I can't really tell you anything about your particular state. There's 50 states. I am not an expert in all 50 states.
You don't know all 50 different unique tax codes from all around the country?
No, and then we do have those international events like Amsterdam coming up. I can't tell you what European tax law would be on that.
Well, that's fair, I guess.
All right. So starting out talking about judges, while tax laws and stuff like that are unique to every state, but there's also a lot of different types of judges. Okay, judges. There are judges that judge professionally. There are judges that judge as a hobby. There are some judges that it's just a light sprinkling that they use to subsidize their F&Ms. Sometimes they're store employees. There's a whole lot of varying levels of involvement in the judge in judging. Maybe they're a part of Judge Foundry. Maybe you are truly independent. So, kind of what we wanted to do is approach those different categories a little bit, starting with, maybe things that are common to all judges. So, Patrick, is your judging income taxable?
Yes. From
Crap.
a U.S. federal government standpoint, income from whatever source derived is potentially taxable, and so being a Magic the Gathering judge, if you receive compensation for it, that would be taxable compensation.
Okay, what about now? If we go to larger events, used to getting a check at the end of those events, but if I work F&Ms and maybe I get free entry, or maybe I'm a Riftbound judge and I get a promo in addition to working the event. Are those non-monetary things? Is that considered income as well?
Yes, those non-monetary things are considered income. So when you're working, typically you're exchanging your employer, whoever's hired you to do the thing, will typically give you money in exchange for your goods or services. But if you receive goods or services, so like if you receive free entry into an event or like a promo or like product as compensation instead of money itself, that's still compensation for your services. And it is taxable at the fair market value of what that would be. Um, and that can be a little bit complicated to figure out what is the fair market value of your compensation when it's like a promo. You're going to have to try and find out like what it's selling for to figure out what the fair market value is for your compensation. It's a little bit easier now that Wizards has gone back to having a suggested retail price because you can always default and say, well, the value of the compensation is the suggested retail price of what I got.
Okay. So this is almost like that you get a car thing from Oprah all those years ago where people were saying that, well, yeah, they got a free car, but they couldn't afford the taxes on it.
Yes, exactly. So
Okay.
you get it. You have to note the value of it when you got it. So this is gonna matter more if you're receiving a promo compensation that might be highly volatile. Like you got a copy of the Dan Dan deck for some reason, and now the Dan Dan deck is selling for a lot higher than like what it was when you first got it.
Gotcha. And that's specifically at the time that you are compensated. So if the pricing or the fair market value of something changes between, let's say, when you first get it and later, you can't necessarily claim what it's going to be later on in like 6 months from when you got it. It has to be on that date, right?
Yeah, you're gonna look at what the on the date that you got it, and because if you got something like that product or a promo, that's like a physical asset that you have. If you go to actually sell it later for money, that initial amount that you reported as your income, that's going to be your cost basis in that asset. And so cost basis is what you're going to use to determine if you actually have like additional tax when you go to sell the item.
Okay, so this is like, okay, hypothetically, let's say I receive a promo card from a Riftbound event that's $200, but then when I go to sell it, I only sell it for 100. I can that's a loss, right?
That would be a loss, yes.
Oh, all right.
Nailed it.
Yep.
So
I
don't
feel
get
like,
mad when your promos go down in value after you get them.
yeah, that's what
Judges.
I'm hearing. Don't get upset at your promos losing value. Oh, jeez. Okay. Okay. So this
The
is
problem there is going to be a lot of record keeping because typically personal assets, if they kind of go down in value, you don't typically get to claim a loss on them. So it's going to be it's capital business assets, like assets that like you would expect to possibly appreciate in value, which collectibles are in a category, and most of our TCGs are it's collectible is the C.
okay. So I do want to touch on that topic when we start getting into the traveling judge. But if you judge an event, let's say a RCQ, and you take a box or you take store credit, okay, that inventory, is that a professional asset or a private asset, or how does that work?
This is the classic alert. Like it depends.
Okay.
It's most likely going to convert to like a personal asset. Would depend on like how you're holding out things. Like maybe you are a judge, but you also have like a card shop on the side that you have a business of, you buy and sell cards, on eBay on the internet somewhere.
Okay.
Um, those could then be kind of converted into business assets. You can hold them for investment because, again, collectibles are kind of in that category of a thing that is presumed like you're going to hold it to be able to have it as an investment. So it is not unreasonable to be able to say, hey, I purchased this thinking I was going to make money on the sale later. I lost money, and then be able to claim a loss when you file taxes eventually.
All right, well, maybe we should talk about something that's a little more concrete. Than if I am a judge and I am a member of a professional organization, maybe International Judge Program, Judge Foundry, UK Magic Judges, and they have dues. Is that tax deductible?
That will depend on if you're an employee or an independent contractor.
Okay.
So this gets into when you talked back at the start of the show about the different types of judges that there might be. There might be the store employee who judges the F&Ms and like their weekly modern event, and it's kind of as part of their duties as part of the store.
Hmm.
They're likely getting everything paid on a W-2 from the employer. They're considered just an employee, and unless they're doing additional magic judging events on the side, there's just not going to be a spot to deduct like the expenses for if they're part of a judge foundry or anything like that. There's just won't be a spot for that. If, say, you're an independent local judge or a traveling judge who goes to events and you get paid as a contractor, like you're just hired for the event for the weekend, you're going to probably be considered as in the business of being a judge. And then you would report your income from that judging as a sole proprietor on a form Schedule C with your taxes. And on that form, you would also be able to deduct ordinary and necessary business expenses, and professional dues are an ordinary and necessary expense on there. So you would be able to deduct the cost of being part of these organizations that would help with your networking and help with your training. Those are expenses that you would be able to deduct if you're an independent contractor. And then kind of the third option for judges where they're just a pure hobbyist. There is currently not a place to deduct any expenses related to that, but they still have to report the income. It just gets reported slightly differently.
Okay, so
Interesting.
what elevates you from a hobbyist to a independent contractor that maybe it doesn't have like a isn't incorporated or anything like that? Like if I have a day job and
Mhm.
but I still do maybe 8 travel events a year. Am I considered a hobbyist or am I considered an independent contractor or what where's that line?
There's not a very clear, bright line. Like, there's a series of factors in determining if your like activity is a business or a hobby. The IRS typically doesn't question too much if you say, yes, it's actually a business rather than a hobby if you're making a profit. As soon as you start like having losses year over year, the IRS is going to say, hey, wait a minute, you're trying to deduct like more business expenses than you had as income from the business. I don't really think you're trying to make money with this endeavor. So part of it is a profit seeking motive. Like, are you trying to get money? Like, is that why you're doing this? Is one of
Mm.
the bigger factors here.
That's right, folks. We're in it for the money. Whoa.
Yeah, don't
Right.
say that too loud. That hurts my soul.
Right.
Just because
Right.
I look at
So
the money and I'm like, I could really be doing something better. All right.
So you talked about deductions and write-offs. Um, I like to throw out I think my job tonight is going to be throwing out a bunch of questions that I've heard in the wild because I've heard a lot of judges just discussing stuff in the wild. Some of them I've heard asking questions like, for example, what counts as research for the purposes of write-offs? Because I've heard quite a few magic judges ask like, "Oh, I can write off buying magic cards because that's me doing research. I need to know all this stuff about magic cards in the new set that came out and all that in order to do my job, right?"
I
So
don't know. I don't know
would
much
something
about
like that
taxes, but
count?
that sounds pretty spurious.
It definitely does. But people have thought to say that, and now I think to ask. So, would something like that count as research? And if so, like, or if not, what does count as research for the purpose of something like a write-off?
Well, like I could see maybe buying magic cards to research the cards in the set way back in the day, back when Wizards didn't post the full set list online. But now all the cards are posted on Wizards of the Coast website, so You can read the card, you can read you can read the description, you can read how the new rules are changing, you can read like potential oracle text changes on there. You can read all of those online without having to purchase product to try and find those cards. So you're going to have a very hard time trying to argue that this
Okay,
was
hear me out. I'm going to
needed.
try.
Okay.
Okay, hear me out. Hear me
I
out.
can hear him. I can hear him.
Yeah.
Stretching
No.
and getting ready for the mental gymnastics.
No.
No, you got something.
Okay, as
All
a
right.
judge, part of my responsibility is determining if cards are actual legal magic cards, which means I need to study the variations of printing techniques between the various printers that Wizards uses to help aid me in figuring out what is and is not a counterfeit.
Yeah,
Bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how that works out for you.
Yeah,
I think he pulled a muscle there.
Yes. So I can see this argument, but like you would not generally be able to just be like, I can just buy whatever product. That would be like a very targeted of I'm buying a card from the Japanese printer and buying a card from, I don't know how many printers we have for US based cards anymore, but like, you actually seek out like one of each of those cards and not just buy packs. So just buying packs, you're probably, no matter what, you're probably going to lose on the, I needed it for research.
But you're saying there's a chance.
There's a very unlikely chance for that. And then
not tax advice, folks. Just point that
and
out.
then what you're also going to be using the card for overall. You could say, yes, I need it for research, but it's like, we're also going to look at the form of how it actually is used. You'd be like, oh, I need to research it. And then it just goes into your commander deck. That's not, they're going to look at that and be like, no, that's being used personally. That's not being used for business.
All right.
So we've got this question once or twice, but I do want to cover this as well. Minor supplies that judges purchase and able to do their jobs and able to work events, are those considered an exemption? Is it worth going through the process of tracking, hey, I bought, 8 red pens that cost me $15, or whatever. Is it worth tracking those expenses? Do we get to declare those?
Yeah, like the basic kind of office supplies that you kind of need to do your job better as a judge, that if you have like some notebooks and some pens, that you need to be able to, take notes when you get brought over for a judge call. Those types of things would be deductible, but if you like lose track of the receipts, some of those things are going to be like, maybe don't worry about it too much, because it's like you buy a pack of pens a year potential. Well, I guess it depends on how much judging you're doing, how many notebooks you're going through, how many boxes of pens you're going through. But yeah, those would be deductible. They'd be generally small amounts, but they would be deductible.
And then is there a threshold? Like Patrick, I don't judge a whole lot during the year right now. I might judge a couple of RCQs. At what point do I not need to worry about declaring my income? And I guess that would include these boxes of product that we're talking about that some judges mysteriously get. I wouldn't know anything about that. Or promos, which, magic judges don't get.
That's why I always said Riftbound when I was talking.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I was going to go Star Wars, yeah.
Okay.
So if you are filing taxes in the US, you have to include all of your income, even if you didn't receive another tax form from it. So, like, you make $100 because you judge a weekend event at a store, probably more than $100. But say you make $100. That's like a small amount, but you still need to claim it on your taxes, even if that's the only judging you do all year. At that point, it's probably just hobby income, which gets reported as just other income that's not reported elsewhere. There's just a line on it. I believe it's currently line 8, but those shift around all the time.
So,
yeah, so that's
even if you don't get a 1099 miss or 1099 end from a store or from a TO, you are legally required to report the $200 that you got from random RCQ 2 towns over. Okay.
Yes, yeah. So generally, if you're judging the events, if you're an employee of the tournament organizer, you're gonna get the money reported on a Form W-2. If you're like a contractor, you're likely going to receive a Form 1099 NEC, which stands for non-employee compensation, or the 1099 miscellaneous, which is for miscellaneous income. They're more likely to report on the NEC because you're doing a service for them. The MISC is more for like windfalls or prizes. So if you like enter a tournament and get a cash prize, you're probably going to you might get a MISC from the tournament organizer that says you won, $10,000 for
Oh,
an event, which would be a big event if you got $10,000 from
yeah.
it. But yeah.
Okay. So, how does being a store employee that also judges change these things? Like, if you are a judge and, like, you are a judge and a store employee.
So that's gonna depend a bit on like what are your job duties at the store. Like so if you're judging for the store for events that like their RCQs on the weekends or PTQs or whatever, and you're normally like a weekday just like behind the counter clerk and being a judge is not part of your job duties, then they have a good argument to say you're actually a contractor on the weekend when you're coming in to host the other event. It kind of gets it mixed in is that like if your job duties kind of overlap a little bit, they should be trying to treat you like an employee for everything that you're doing then for the store. Because if your normal job duties also include judging like weeknight Magic events, then they
Hmm.
should be treating you as an employee when you're there on the weekend also judging an event, even if it's like extra time.
Okay. So, it's not like a concept of you're off the clock and judging. You should be, if part of your job responsibilities is judging and you are judging an event, then you should be on the clock.
You generally should be. Again, this is going to be where you get a little bit of labor law going in there as well, because shady employees will try and say, oh, they're a contractor at this time and an employee at this time to try and avoid overtime compensation issues. So
Is that
they try to
shady
skirt around
employee or
those issues.
employers? Like who's trying to
Employers. So the
Okay.
employer will try and have you work 40 hours and then maybe have you come back on the weekend and be like, I need you to work 12 hours. And it's like, well, I've already worked 40 Monday through Friday. You want me to work another 12 hours on Saturday and Sunday for a 2-day event? That seems unreasonable.
Hmm.
Oh, okay. Huh.
I learned
So
something
there's,
today.
yeah,
Yeah.
so there's like labor laws to try and help with it. That's why it's usually very hard to like the example like I can think of off the top of my head where like an employee um, also gets a 1099 from their employer. Sometimes it's commissions, like car salesmen might get both, or insurance might get both because they might get a commission on a 1099. Um, or like your store has a bunch of like store branded shirts. They don't give them to you to like just as your shirt forever, but they have just store shirts that whatever employee's working that day puts on, and you volunteer to go wash them all. And they say, okay, if whoever decides to do the laundry gets like an extra $100 bonus that week, and then they might give it to you on a 1099 because it's not part of your normal job duties to do laundry at the store.
Hmm.
Just remembering back when I was in college and I worked for one of the state Department of Transportations, and my boss one time just sent me home early to go wash the state car, and I was like, "Oh, am I getting paid?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay, go do that."
I'm glad that's where your brain went. My brain went to the Brady Bunch episode where one of the kids like uses the washing machine for the first time and it's a disaster. And I'm thinking of that in the back of a game store and just suds like overflowing and flowing out into the game. I don't know. Don't listen to me,
No, you're
folks.
you're you're fine. Uh, uh, if your judge washing machine breaks down and you have to
Yes.
replace it, can you get a
Uh,
like it's the washing machine that you wash your judge pants in?
I guess speaking about clothing, typically clothing is not something you're allowed to deduct. You can deduct like safety gear, like so um like maybe you're a welder and you need to actually buy a specialty safety equipment is usually something you could make an argument is I need this for my particular job. But like most judges, like if you're hosting an event, the tournament organizer might be like, wear black pants, or I don't care what type of pants you wear, or, whatever dress code they might set for the particular event. And the fact that you had to buy a pair of black dress pants that also happens to have a bunch of pockets is not a deductible expense.
Wow.
What if it's
That's
got a lot of
rude.
pockets?
I mean, right?
Just because it's very utility pants, they are not
I'm
deductible.
I'm talking 1990s superhero level of pockets.
So what about a utility kilt? I mean, that's got to be no. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So we can move, I guess, from this topic in general, right? The small deductions and things, and talk about travel, right?
Traveling judges.
Traveling
Yep.
judges is a whole thing. Judges travel all over the country, all over the world to judge. Um, as a baseline, what records should traveling judges be keeping, and better yet, how should we be tracking them for purposes of record keeping for the IRS?
Yeah, so record like the state of the records, it's pretty varied. You could have physical records, you could have digital records. Most people would probably prefer digital records just for ease of storage because you don't want to have a box of your receipts in your closet that you have to add up at the end of the year. And they can also be lost if they're only available in physical, because if they get lost and suddenly you lose all of your records, but you don't have records of it anymore to substantiate your deductions. So I would recommend, if you have a physical record, to also get it digitally. And then if you get it digitally, make sure it's like in an account you'll be able to access in the future. Because I've had some clients that have they lost access to their Gmail account and got locked out and no longer have access to all of the records they were storing there, which it's always good practice to make sure you have those stored in a safe place, digitally or physically.
I've seen people actually struggle with that because they would use their work email or work Gmail account to store some of those things, and then they get let go by that job, and now they don't have access to that email.
Yeah. I gotta think that keeping your judge job information on your day job email seems all sorts of problematic.
Seems like a bad look to me.
Yeah.
And it also usually violates a lot of company policies on use of the equipment.
Well, I mean,
Probably
that's
why
what
you're not
bad
working
look,
there anymore.
Yeah, bad luck means highly illegal and problematic, a whole bunch of different factors. Right?
Yeah, so like maybe make an account just for your judging if you
Right.
want, like, for the storage. Get like your OneDrive or your Google Drive or whatever particular document storage of choice. Make sure it's like something you can have access to for those, for keeping it. But as far as like the level of records, it depends exactly on what type of expense it is. So like, your plane ticket, you're going to need a copy of the invoice from the airline, that receipt that you got when you ordered the plane ticket, or a train ticket. If it's something where you're driving, you're going to have some clear evidence of the distance you're traveling for business. Yeah, I guess going off onto a tangent about personal cars and using it for business, because
Sure.
I'm assuming most of us judges do not have
Judge
enough
Vans.
money to
A
have a
judge-mobile?
judge a judge mobile. Yes, you don't have a judge
Oh,
mobile.
man. Now I have a new life goal.
Mine has a dome on the top of it that I can stand up in.
Excellent.
Yeah. So you're probably using your personal vehicle to get to and from your various judge events, and also to travel, to drive however long your 100 miles to get to the convention, to get to MagicCon Vegas, which from here would be like 800 miles, I think, from my place. So
Yeah,
it's a
just
long
an
drive.
hour. Yeah.
So you're gonna need to have for vehicles, it's perfectly fine to use it both personally and for business. That's perfectly fine. but you have to have a clear mileage log of what were your personal miles versus your business miles. And the level of detail of that is going to be a little bit dependent on if you're using the standard mileage deduction or you want to use your actual expenses with your car. So the standard mileage
Yeah.
deduction, you have to keep clear track of all of your business miles, and you get a flat dollar amount per mile that is business. With the actual expenses, you have to keep track of all of the miles you drive in the year, but then you also are able to deduct all the costs of, you get to deduct a prorated portion of all of your gas, all of your car repairs, all of your like tire changes, all of your oil changes, all of those things. You get to
Oh.
deduct a prorated version for what was your percentage use of the car for business according to your mileage log.
Okay.
I'd rather just
So
With
have
the
a Judge-mobile. I swear it sounds
so
easier.
so
yeah,
let's
with
say, just to make math easy, my personal car, I drive in a year 10,000 miles.
mhm.
Of that 10,000 miles, I 1,000 miles of it is for judge travel, and I spend $600. Hold on, it's March 20 2026. So I just spend like $5,000 in gas, right?
Yep,
That's what a tank is now.
Sounds about right.
Um, yep,
sounds
sounds
right.
about right. So because I drove, I spent $5,000 in gas over the year. Drove 1,000 miles, or 10,000 miles. 1,000 of it is judging, so that's 10%. I would basically of that $5,000, I would get 10% roughly. Like, obviously laws and stuff differ,
Yeah,
but
yeah, roughly.
So
So
five
like in
hundred
that
dollars if we're
5,000,
doing
you
math.
get about a $500 deduction, and then like it would be the same kind of prorated amount for all of the oil changes you did for the year, your tire rotations, car washes, other vehicle maintenance that you do during the year. You would be able to get a prorated portion of those. And then you'd also be able to depreciate the value of your car as you're claiming these deductions as well. So
So
if you bought
bringing
the
it all,
car,
yeah, and
yeah,
bringing it all full circle to the whole idea of research, we wouldn't be able to deduct the trips to the game store to play Friday Night Magic either, right?
that would be a personal trip,
Yeah,
correct?
okay. All right. I got it. I got it now.
Yeah.
okay. But
You see the webs we
driving
can weave.
driving one town over to judge their RCQ does count.
Yes.
Maybe. That
Okay.
one I'm gonna say
What?
maybe for. Yeah. So you don't get to deduct your commuting miles. And commuting miles, in many ways, it's like something that is reasonable within your business tax home to just drive to and from. So if like you're one town
Hmm.
over,
Mm-hmm.
like, and it's like, oh, this is just the suburb of the city, and like the RCQ is just at the convention center. You don't get to deduct the cost from your home to the convention center because business miles is work site to work site, or like an extended travel outside of your tax home is what was a way to view it.
Wow. Okay. So,
Interesting. But if I have to drive 2 hours,
yeah.
then
It's
it's more reasonable.
this is where it gets
Some number of hours. Is that more easy to
some number of
digest?
hours. It becomes an easier case because like the travel mileage starts when the trip to outside your tax home lasts of a duration that is longer than like a normal work day and such that you have to be able to sleep before you return home. So like an overnight trip.
Oh.
So you
Oh.
drive you're work so like you go, you're working day one and day two of an event at the convention center, and it's a 2 hours away. That would be something you probably would be able to say is, yeah, that's a deductible. It's travel. It's 2 hours there. I work 12 hours, like for day one, because you decided to work start to close at the for the event. And then you then like have a hotel overnight rather than coming back home just because it's just such a long drive and you worked such a long day.
You know,
And then you do day two, and then you can travel home after that. And those miles then for travel would count.
I realize a lot of these rules are set up to prevent abuse, but
Right.
man, those are persnickety.
Yeah, let me do an
Yeah.
extreme example, because we've had friends of the show that have come on that, let's say they judge in Montana, and for them driving to an RCQ to judge or to work an event is not a 1 hour trip. It's a 4 or a 5 hour trip, because that's where the next game store is. And they will do this all in one day. They'll drive there, they'll do the event, and they'll drive home. They're putting 9 hours on their car. Is that reasonable commute, or is that we're still talking travel, or because they're not spending the night and they're doing it all in one day, it's just lump it?
The overnight for travel is a requirement for like the travel miles. However,
Wow.
this is where, as I said, it's from work site to work site. So if you have a home office, that is a work site. So if you
Mm.
have a home office at home and then you drive from your home office to that RCQ, then that's a work site to work site distance, and that all becomes business miles.
Oh, okay. So everybody have a home office?
This is why you get paid the big bucks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And home office is going to be one of those things that has to be exclusively used for business. It can't just, and it has to like be exclusively used for your business of judging. So you can't just, a lot of people work from home now and their bedroom is also their home office. That's not really going to cut it. You have to have like an area of your house that is exclusively used for the business of judging, which it doesn't necessarily have to be for actively working within. It could be an exclusive area for storage. If you have like a lot of judge related things that you store specifically in one closet, you can establish a home office.
My
Just be like,
office is
this
in the
closet
closet.
is only for my judge stuff,
Okay, Harry Potter.
and no personal stuff ever goes in there.
Because, like, I'll give you a purely hypothetical example. But let's say I'm a fella who is a judge, but I also am a musician, and I have a home studio that I use as kind of like my business home studio. But that's also where I do maybe like a judge podcast or something out of there. When you mix those kind of things, like let's say you have one side hustle, because a lot of judges will have more than one side hustle. I can already tell this is getting into extremely nebulous territories, but like, does that kind of thing stack? Is that just making it more nebulous and open you up to more liability, perhaps? How would something like that work?
The more mixed it is, the more kind of record keeping you want to have of like how you're using it. So like say you're a musician and you have a home studio that you also use to record a podcast about Magic the Gathering judging. It's not like if as long as that space is used exclusively for business, nothing personal, then you need to like apportion the area and expenses related to that between the two businesses properly. And so that would involve
Lots and
a
lots
lot
of
of
record keeping,
record
effectively.
keeping. Yeah, to
Yeah.
be like, well, I'm using it, for 6 hours a day for my other gig work, and then I'm using it, 2 hours for podcasting. And then you just have to kind of apportion it and take all of those expenses over time.
Okay.
Cool.
Before we get off of traveling, you mentioned that air travel is something that is probably deductible. Is ride shares, Ubers, Lyfts from the airport to the convention hall or the hotel also deductible?
So those expenses that
Mm-hmm.
are part of your business travel, like so, say you're going to Vegas,
Okay.
MagicCon Vegas, you fly out there, and then you take an Uber or Lyft or whatever to your hotel. That's going
Mm-hmm.
to be fine. That's going to be travel expenses. And you go from the hotel to the convention center, you have an Uber Lyft, whatever expense you have there. That should also be a deductible expense. If, say, you go out in the evening to go party on the strip and take an Uber and Lyft in that evening, that's going to be a personal kind of side trip. That Uber Lyft would not be deductible
Okay.
because
I'm
that's
gonna
a very
split.
personal in nature.
I'm gonna
You're
split
going to the strip
hairs
to party. Yeah.
for a second. If I go from the venue to dinner, and then from dinner to hotel, is dinner to hotel considered deductible? Like I needed to get home or to the hotel. right?
That gets you closer to being able to say yes, I would want it all, but it's a lot of it is they look at the reasonableness of the expense. So the basic principle behind all business expenses that are deductible is that it has to be ordinary and necessary to the business. Ordinary means that has to be something that makes sense with the field of business that you're in. Like Magic Judge would have different ordinary expenses than a mechanic. Like there's just there's like
Sure.
different skill sets, different things needed for those two things.
We
So you
can't
look
write
at
off
like
the
what's
snap-on tool set, right?
exactly. If you're a Magic Judge and you try to buy a Snap-on, you're good luck. That's a very expensive tool, and you're going to be paying it off and not be able to
I
deduct
need
it
to
because
open
why would your
boxes.
yeah.
You don't need $150 utility knife to do that.
Yeah.
I don't judge me. Those sorcery.
He will make the argument.
Have you tried to cut into one of those sorcery boxes? Those things are thick. Like they're
What about
sturdy.
so ordinary and necessary, right? We're talking about that. How does food fall into this category? When you know that the $20 convention center hot dog, the extravagant judge meal that we see some people go on, does food enter into our business expenses when we're on a weekend trip at all, or is it just accommodations and travel?
Um, yeah, so you are allowed to deduct like you have to eat while you're traveling. Like so if you're not in travel, like if you're not traveling, you don't get to deduct food generally unless like there's a very strong business purpose for the meal, which is unlikely to happen as an independent judge. You're probably not going to get reach that threshold unless you're actually traveling. So you go to the local convention center that you don't have to travel for, and you buy a $20 convention hot dog. No tax deduction there. That's just
Bad
unfortunate
choices.
because you're not yeah.
Yeah.
But if you are traveling, then you're going to be able to deduct a portion of your food expenses while you're out and about. Um, this is where there's actually two ways to figure your meals deduction. One is the actual expense method, where you have to keep all of your receipts for all of your meals, enter those in, and then you get to take half of those as your meal deduction. Because the idea is like
You
food is
gotta
going to
eat.
be more expensive because it's, you're out traveling, but you have to eat. So you're allowed to take some portion of it as a deduction.
So you'd be eating if you were
And
home.
if
You
you
just might be doing it less expensive.
cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless you're working the local convention, and then in which case you're just kind of screwed because it's both more expensive and you don't get to deduct it.
Yeah, but that's when you pack a lunch.
That's when you pack the lunch. The other way to figure your meals expenses is there's a special rule for sole proprietors, which most magic judges would be considered a sole proprietor. You can look at the General Services Administration's website where they have a per diem that is used for reimbursement for government employees, and you can find like what is the reimbursement rate for the city you happen to be traveling to, and you can use that as your amount for the before like the pre 50% deduction. So you can put that per diem amount on, and then your actual tax deduction will actually be half of what that amount is. But you have to list like the full amount, and you get half of it. And that per diem on the General Services Administration's website, it changes depending on what city you are, because they're like, this is a cheap city, so you have a slower per diem than if you are like in New York. It's a more expensive city, so they have a higher per diem for those cities. So you have to go to that website and look up the per diem, and you have to know what city you traveled to and how many days you were there, because they have a partial day. So like if you leave like afternoon, like you don't get breakfast. And then it counts like the number of days you're in that travel status, and then you can get that deduction without having to keep records. So the actual expenses method might give you a better tax deduction because food is probably going to be more expensive than that per diem. but you have to keep all of those receipts and store them and add them up and then maintain
Uh,
them as a record.
okay,
The
here's a question. Is there like an app or something that helps with this that you might that you've run across? If
um
it's just a like, I'm sure something exists.
I'm sure something exists, but I haven't found one like I'm too happy about. Like so for like
Okay.
mile tracking, I know Mile IQ works pretty well for that. Um, I've seen some people use Evernote for their business expenses, and some people just like upload it to like their Google Drive. So like it's I haven't seen like an app that is like the killer yet, but there might be. Maybe there is
All
some
right.
new QuickBook product or
Uh,
something that comes out
And
and
if
helps you with that.
not, there's a lot of coding and programming loving judges out there. So
I
Yeah,
would just
I mean, with
say,
the rise of the LLMs and their ability to like recognize images, maybe there might be one of those that can, you take a photo and it imports everything into your expense report for you.
listeners at home, if you have an app that you use and want to share it, go ahead and post to the JudgeCast Discord or the YouTube video, wherever you're listening to this.
get in the comments.
Yeah, get in the
Get the
comments.
comments.
All right. Uh, okay, I got a hotel
Mhm.
is clearly deductible, right?
Yes, your hotel while you're traveling would be deductible.
Okay. What if I am on, let's say I'm in Orlando, I live on the east side, this convention's on the west side, and it's working 2 days. My hotel staying on the west side?
So your traveling is going to end up like it's the tax home is what might stop you because it's like if you're on the east side of Orlando is where you live, the convention's on the west side, and you decide to get a hotel room. If it was not necessary for you to stay in the hotel, like you could have driven home and gotten sleep before your day two, like it would be reasonable to do that. They're going to say you're not actually traveling, you're just getting a hotel because you don't want to stay at home.
Okay. If
Uh,
I argued
Um,
that I would get less than 8 hours of sleep traveling
you'd
back and
get
forth, that
start
makes a stronger argument.
you'd start getting a better argument. The less sleep you'd be able to get before you'd have to resume your duties,
Okay.
um, would help with that argument.
Okay.
Yeah, speaking of reasonable, you used the phrase earlier that actually sounded very similar to something that is often heard in judging. With head judging, you never really want to deviate from the policy unless it's significant and exceptional. And you were just using a phrase that is basically the inverse of that for what should be understood as reasonable for tax purposes. I find that very interesting.
Oh, the ordinary necessary business
Right.
expenses?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
ordinary
Sorry,
and
yes.
necessary.
Ordinary and necessary business expenses, yes. Ordinary and necessary business expenses. So they have it's two terms that have like their own sub definition, with the ordinary being like, does it seem to make sense with the type of job you're doing? And then the necessary is there a causal relationship for the expense and the generating of your income? So this is one, like I knew an accountant who he had to actually get somebody's case appealed up to the Supreme Court related to realtor got a car phone in the 80s. And they said, well, that's just an extravagant expense. You don't need a car phone. And they had to show that because they got the car phone, they were able to make more sales and justify it. And so they like, because it's the early days of they're like, why would you need a phone in your car or have a phone in your pocket or anything like that? And now everybody
Lunacy.
has one. Yeah, it's lunacy. Why would you need that for taxes? Like that's an extravagance. That's not ordinary. You're the first one to do it, and it's not necessary. And so they had to try and say like, hey, it should be a reasonable expense for this type of business. And you can see that by the fact that I had it, I'm generating income more so than I did before. And so that's going to be the case also with a lot of judge things. And that's where it gets hard with like buy the people who want to say that they buy product for research purposes. It's going to be hard to say that that's going to help get more money judging. Just be like, well, I bought product. It's like, well, where's the causal relationship between you buying the product and you making money from the judging?
So one more question with accommodations before we leave it. let's say that Marcos, Bryan, and I are all going to Vegas, and for convenience sake, we decide to split a room. How does that work when we figure out expenses? Do we all need receipts of the room and then take 1/3? What happens there?
That's gonna be get the best records you can from the hotel. Because, like, if you get a hotel room and they say you can split it and they let you just split it all on 3 cards and be like, when you're checking out, it's like, oh, 3 separate bills. Be like, boom, I paid my third, I paid my third, I paid my third. If they're willing to let you do that, that would be the best option.
But if I
Um,
paid $50 to sleep on the floor, I'm, or
you're gonna want to get a receipt
okay,
from your friend
the floor
that says,
receipt. Yep.
yeah, I
So
paid,
so
for the
Venmoing a certain amount to my friend who I just crashed, I split a room with a little hotel emoji doesn't quite count for that.
I mean, that's some evidence. What's going to happen is they're going to look at like the evidence you have and the circumstances and see and be like, well, is this good enough evidence that you spent money on a hotel? So like just a hotel emoji might not cut it, but like, actually having a description in there for your Venmo of $50 split of
To
hotel
say
room.
nothing of the $600 I spent in airfare to go to this other city. Yeah,
Right.
I think
that
we can,
together
yeah,
starts to form a picture,
we
right?
can tie it together, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
But that does also point out that the record keeping includes noting what you're spending money on. So if
Right.
I'm sending a PayPal payment or a Venmo payment to somebody that I split a room with, writing my share of shared hotel room for event MagicCon Las Vegas certainly will be much more helpful than random hotel emoji or a bed emoji, that sort of thing, right?
Yes.
All
The
right.
better the records. Yeah. And like,
I'm gonna ask a question,
Mhm.
and you can decline to answer it.
Oh boy.
Okay. If Marcos and I split a room, and I pay $800 for the room, my credit card, and Marcos gives me $400. I'm just gonna leave that there. I'm not actually gonna ask the question. Just anyway. Parking in a parking garage also covered as a travel
yeah,
expense.
yeah. Parking and tolls are
Okay.
covered, and you even get those with the standard mileage deduction.
Okay. Now I've got another kind of this question is very specific to, let's say, me. What about hosting fees for a judge related podcast? Would those be considered tax deductible? This is an
You
audience of one here.
that you are paying hosting fees to your judge-related.
Podcast website, JudgeCast.com. Just throwing that out there as a,
Is
random.
Yeah.
Those-
For instance.
yeah, those types of fees. If you're an independent judge and like you're part of the podcast, you're hosting it in other ways besides just paying for the website. Like the business of that would typically be kind of like advertising or like a way to try and solicit business to get people to rely on
Oh.
you as a judge.
Working on my brand, yes.
Yes, you're
Mhm.
working on your branding there, so that would be something that would typically be tax deductible. Like having a website for your business, that seems ordinary and necessary in this day and age.
Oh, hey.
So the fees you have for that, that's like something
There we go. There's our
easy
tagline. JudgeCast. Ordinary and necessary.
and necessary.
Not significant and exceptional.
No, the opposite of significant and
We just
exceptional.
ruined what Brian's going to do at the end of the show here. Right? That sounded perfect to me. Oh well, you got to come up with something new now.
Okay, so you mentioned that judges were predominantly sole proprietors. Do I need to or do judges need to form an LLC in order to protect themselves in some way? Is that ordinary and necessary, or significant and exceptional?
Um, it's both. It's both in that if somebody were to try and incorporate and create a limited liability company or a corporation, like you could argue that it's reasonable because you're trying to create this judge business to do so. You're not really going to get any benefit though from it. So a typical reason that you would be creating an entity like that is it's the limited liability shield of if something happens and somebody sues you, sues the business, I should say. If somebody sues the business, they can't get at your personal assets. They can only get at the assets that the business holds.
So would a situation be something like I DQ a player and they come after me for slander or something like that?
See, this is where it's like you're not going to
I'm not talking
necessarily get
taxes.
protected because the limited liability only protects like things that go through the business for it. You are always personally liable for your own torts. So if you defame somebody or
Whoa.
you slander somebody, you're still personally liable. But like you as an agent of the business make the business also liable. So this is where the protection would be if like you're starting a judge conglomerate and have multiple judges that are employees of like the conglomerate. Then a corporation or LLC might protect you because then the other judges that are part of this conglomerate are representing the JudgeCast Incorporated, whatever that happens to be. They're representing that as they're giving advice and going out and doing things, going to events, getting in car accidents on the way to events, those types of things. So people would say, "Aha, you're an employee of JudgeCast Incorporated. I am going to sue you, and I'm suing JudgeCast Incorporated as your employer." And then JudgeCast Incorporated, because you've incorporated, means that you, as the owner of JudgeCast Incorporated, aren't then liable personally for what your employee did. And that's where like the protection would happen is usually if there's some sort of third party, like some other person could cause you to become liable for something, that's when that LLC or that corporation would become much more handy. Like you have an employee or you have a storefront where somebody could like slip and fall because of building maintenance issues.
So you
Um,
used a lawyer term a little bit ago where you said we are responsible for our own torts. Now,
yes.
I don't have any torts that I know of. But what does that mean that we're responsible for our own torts?
Tort is you did something wrong to somebody else. So there's the legal like so the torts like you punch somebody, that's battery, that's a tort. So it's just like there's intentional torts, there's negligent torts, there's a bunch of different flavors of torts. Some are cherry. No wait, that's tarts. Um,
Yeah.
Thank you for
I
saying
was
it out
gonna do
loud.
a cheese. I was gonna do a cheesecake joke at some point in time here, and there we go.
In Spanish, cake is pronounced torta. So all I'm hearing you say about is there's like criminal cakes and negligent cakes. And yeah, anyways, go on.
because of
Okay.
federal regulations, there are also criminal cherry pies if you don't have enough cherries in them. But
I
Amazing.
assume that's going to a legal precedent, and I love that.
Criminal cherry pies.
that's there's a whole podcast about the criminal cherry pies.
I love this. I love case law so much.
Okay.
Anyways, go on.
All right.
So, um, yeah, so tort is just the fancy legal term of like you've just wronged somebody, and there's lots of different versions of them. There's the ones that like you actually physically harm somebody, or like you kind of mentally harm them, or like you hurt their reputation in some way. So like defamation and slander are like the reputational torts that you might encounter.
I'm so hungry now. I swear to gosh.
Okay. Okay. So
Moving on.
let's do
Yeah.
this. We've used traveling to Vegas as an example for MagicCon. Let's say I am a Florida judge because I am, and Florida we don't have any state taxes. But if I go work an event in New York and I am, let's say, paid by a company that operates out of Roanoke, Virginia, just a random location. Um, am I paying state income taxes in Florida, Virginia, or New York?
Uh, so as a general rule, for as far as like the localities, for like you're a resident of a state, services are also like taxable where the service is performed. So like for employment law, like this is common like with the work from home. So your company's based in Virginia, they're employing you in Florida, they're paying you and you're only liable for Florida stuff because that's just how, like, it's just where the services are performed is where the tax might kind of accrue. Most states with a income tax have a worldwide taxation for their residents. The US also has worldwide taxation for its residents, which means that wherever the source of income is, because you're a resident or US citizen, it's taxable to you in your home country and your home state. So Florida's not the best example there because they don't have a state level income tax, but it would be like if you were a New York resident and you worked in Florida. Florida doesn't have tax, but you still have to pay the tax on it in New York as a resident of New York.
Okay.
And I
New
experienced
York,
this personally because I worked in New York. I'm sorry, I worked in Connecticut and lived in New York at one point, and I was getting taxed out the wazoo from multiple states left and right every year. It was rough.
yeah. I know the Northeast states because they're very close together, and like it is so common for a resident of one state to work in another state that they have a lot of resident tax issues. And I also know New York is pretty notorious for having a very short term, like you work in New York a very short amount before they try and tax a lot more of your income.
Oh
So
yeah,
once you get
can
into
confirm.
once you get into the state level taxes, you're going to want to look at your state income. Like, yeah, so most states will have a Department of Taxation or a franchise tax board or a Department of Revenue or some sort of other revenue service for that state. You're going to want to look at what your state rules are for worldwide tax, like taxation for your income. And then you're going to also want to have to look at the states where you happen to be performing services and see what their filing requirements are. So most states, if you're self-employed, the work you're doing in that state that you're getting compensated for, they're going to try and tax that work generally. So, like you live in Florida, you work in New York, you're going to have to look at New York's filing requirements to see after you do all of their forms, do you actually have to file in New York? And that's just kind of going to be the way it is for the state level issues is that you're going to have to look at where you're actually working and then look at like contact their board of tax or whatever and figure out do you have a filing requirement in that state.
So it sounds to me like there's a lot of legwork and research that has to happen. And now I'm suddenly understanding why CPAs and tax accountants and tax lawyers are paid so much to do all this legwork for you effectively. How important or how reasonable is it, do you think, for a judge who might work in, let's say, like 10, 12 different states over the year? How wise is it for them to just say, hey, here's all my info. CPA, please just make this work right so that I don't have to worry about getting audited or having any negative repercussions come my way down the line.
That's a perfectly reasonable stance to take if you don't want to like read through the rules and regulations to be like, is this form require me to file a tax in this particular state? Um, I do know for people who are going to be working Vegas, Nevada doesn't have a state income tax. So that's at least one state off of your list that
Oh
you don't have to
yeah.
worry
Hell
about.
yes. Going there 3 times this year.
So,
Yeah.
so you're not going to have to worry about their state level income taxes for you did some work at Magic Con Vegas. You're not going to have to worry about filing a Nevada tax return. Any other convention or PTQ or whatever that you happen to do, you're going to have to just look at each state you happen to have worked in and like you can hire somebody to help you out with it. I would recommend because for a paid tax preparer, there's actually very little that you have to do to become a paid tax preparer. You basically just have to pay a filing fee to the IRS that says you're going to start filing taxes.
Huh.
And you don't have to have any training to do anything. You just have to pay them a registration fee that gives a PTIN, a paid tax identification number. So that's just going to be the preparer number that they just have to include with every return. But there's not like any kind of training actually required to become a tax preparer. Some states have that, but that's state level again that you're going to be looking at your individual state to see what types of certifications they might require for somebody to actually file taxes. That said, if you're going to have somebody help you out, you want to look for credentials. So there's EA, which is enrolled agent. That is a tax certification the IRS manages, and that means they've taken a lot of very complicated tax tests. So they know a lot of things about taxes. And then
So what it,
CPAs would be by the state level board of accounting would be certifying those generally. And then you also would have attorneys, which would be your state law board, bar association. Well, not bar association, but state bar.
so what I'm hearing is, and again, I'm going to try and draw some parallels to judging in general here. So what I'm hearing is anybody can file taxes, but then you can also hold a certification that says I am at a minimum level to file taxes. And then even more certifications or higher levels of certifications that say I know how to file taxes well. Interesting.
Exactly. Yeah, because yeah, you want to look for those when you're getting your taxes done. Another option there's a lot of great resources. If your state, if you can find a VITA organization here, so there's Volunteer Income Tax Assistance, so VITA, VITA. It's free tax help. It's like through a program funded a lot with the IRS as well as like state level agencies help fund it, but it's like usually like it might be done at a community center or a library, or there might be a more organized like nonprofit in your area that does it. They do free tax help, and there are quite a few of them that have been specializing a little bit more in self-employed workers because of gig workers.
Everybody has a side hustle nowadays.
Yeah, with the rise of all the gig economy, that they have to adapt and help with that. Many of them don't necessarily do states other than the one that they're located in, but they might be able to give you some additional resources for if you were going to try and figure out what to do about one of the other states that you did some work in.
Cool. Now you talk about states also. What about the judges who go internationally? How does that throw a wrench into complications?
So how that throws a wrench into complications with the international is, so your home state and the US is going to tax you on your worldwide income typically. If you're going to MagicCon Amsterdam and working there, I have no idea what the tax laws in Europe are for those things if you'd have to file, but you might have to file some sort of tax form there. I don't know. But if you receive money working abroad,
That's a very
it is
valid answer.
if you receive money working abroad, it is going to be taxed in the US. And how you're going to have to figure that is you're going to have to look at the exchange rate on the day you receive the funds. Which this is also, it becomes much easier if you happen to get the contract written in US dollars. So if you're working there and they say, we're going to pay you a sum of, 3,000 US dollars for working the event,
Mm-hmm.
and the contract's written in US dollars, that makes your life way easier than if it's like denoted in the local currency, because then you're going to have to go to the US Treasury and find out what the exchange rate was on the day you got the money.
No, and this may not be an area of your expertise, and I don't know a lot about it because I haven't traveled internationally. But when you come back into the country, don't you have to declare customs if you're like let's say you got boxes of product and you're bringing them back, then you have some value, something that you earned over there. Do you have to declare that at customs? Do you have to declare income at customs? Is that any of that required?
You don't typically have to declare the income at customs, but the particular items you're bringing back might be subject to some sort of import thing. That's like a whole different importing laws going on about like, are you going to be able to, like, you can't bring more than like 6 bottles of wine back thing. So I don't know. You'd have
I'm
to.
going to bring this case back and nobody's going to argue. No, I know.
I'm
Okay.
still upset that Canada has a bottle of my maple syrup that was apparently too large for me to bring back. That tilted me to no end.
Could you just... Was it the fact that the bottle was too big? Could you just chug some of it real quick?
I mean,
a
yeah,
la
but I
Super
wasn't going to
Troopers.
stand there
Okay, problem
chugging
solved.
a giant bottle of maple syrup And literally, I've had issues in the past where like I was
Put
going
it
through
on your
customs,
torts.
bringing something, tried to eat it, and they started yelling at me to stop because I was destroying evidence. So
You just failed your
just
audition
not
for
doing it.
Broken Lizard. I'm sorry, but that's okay. It's you'll be fine.
All right. So let's go over.
With the Customs and Border Patrol, like if you're bringing the product back, you might have to also pay tariffs now with what's going on. So
Also, yes.
I mean,
Okay, so I realize that this is the end of March. Okay, but and a lot of this information is good year round when it comes to collecting information. But when do you actually need to file your taxes by in the U.S.?
So in the US, your due date is going to typically be April 15th, unless it happens to fall on a holiday or a weekend, in which case it's the next business day afterwards. So, fun fact, you can't ever have it on a Friday. Tax day is never going to be Friday because there's like an Emancipation Day thing that gets bumps back to it's like observed on the Friday before if it's on a Saturday. So it's like April 16th in Washington,
I
D.C.
I
So you
have a
can't ever have
feeling
a Friday
that
tax day.
most judges either apply the second they get all their forms or like the weekend before tax day, just based on how they apply for events. I gotta
Yep.
imagine it's the same.
Yeah.
All right.
So with also with that with the tax filing, I want to just kind of go over like if you so like that's when your tax return and payment is due is going to be April 15th. You can file for an extension of the paperwork. So say you're still missing a form from one of your places, or you're trying to recreate a record that got lost somewhere along the way and you need some additional time, you can file for an extension until October to file the paperwork. It doesn't give you an extension to pay the amount of tax you owe, but it does give you an extension on that paperwork. So, like, you'd file the extension and they'd say, well, give us what you think is going to be your tax owed, and then you can get a refund of that when you do finally file your taxes in October if it turns out you overpaid. Um, I also want to talk about one other big tax deadline that will happen for you as a sole proprietor that people don't. Some people get caught off guards by this is that you're a sole proprietor, so you're self-employed, and there's a self-employment tax. Um, and this tax is about 15% of your earnings from self-employment. So that's like that's on top of your income taxes for the year. So it's like an additional 15. It's to pay the payroll taxes for Social Security and Medicare. So that way, if Social Security still exists, you'll be eligible for it in the future um, through your self-employment, and that kicks in for your judge earnings once you make more than $400.
So wait. So when I'm figuring out that like let's say I'm working $1,000 and I fall within a 20% bracket. I don't know if that's an actual okay. So I'm going to pay $200 in taxes on the $1,000. There's an additional 15% as a sole proprietor.
Yes, it's 15.3%. And that'll kick in once you make more than $400, and that's also when you are going to be required to make quarterly estimated payments. So the IRS for sole proprietor, self-employed, they want you to make estimated payments throughout the year of what you think your tax is going to be, or else you will have a penalty and interest when you actually then do file in the next year.
Huh.
And so those estimated payments, the requirement to start paying them starts at $400. And once you get that, the quarters, IRS federal quarters are a little bit strange for income taxes because there's a short quarter and a long quarter. Because the first quarter is January through March, 3 months. Yeah, that's due April 15th. Quarter two is April and May, and that's due June 15th. And then you have a June, July, August quarter that is due September 15th. And then you have September, October, November, December quarter that is due January 15th for those estimated payments.
Okay, that's huh.
My brain just went
I
pop.
love how that silence says a lot about
Yeah.
things we may or may not have known about how taxes work around self-employment.
Yeah. For people who have like a mix of self-employment and W-2 employment, it sometimes isn't too bad because they're typically employers are withholding more tax than you actually owe in the year. They try to get it pretty close, but it's usually most people with a W-2 job will end up with a refund. And so since you're overpaying on your employee side of things, that also helps offset your self-employed taxes that you have to pay because that's like you're paying into your tax account, and so that can help out a little bit.
So if I'm filling all this stuff out at the end of the year, say using like TurboTax or something like that, it's hitting me when it's figuring that stuff out. It's hitting me for all that extra, the interest and stuff like that.
If there's a safe harbor as if the total amount due is less than $1,000, then typically you're not going to have to pay any penalty or interest for not paying enough throughout the year. So if like you file your taxes and it says you owe $788 at the end of the year, you won't owe an underpayment penalty. It's once you get over that $1,000 that you might have additional penalties and interest.
So even though the money is due at the end of the year, they still charge you interest on.
What it should have been paid as an estimated payment.
Wow.
Yes.
And then if that estimated payment ends up being over what you would have paid, you get the
They give you
amount
that
that
interest
you
back,
overpaid
right?
back, but you don't get that interest back, or you do get that interest back.
You don't get the interest. So this is where,
Oh,
as somebody who's done taxes, always talking to people, I'm like,
there's so much tort right here.
owing, owing the money, owing money come tax time doesn't feel good. But if it's
Can
within the safe
confirm.
harbor, what it means is basically the government gave you a no interest loan until tax day because it's not the final amount is not due until tax day. And then if you get a big refund, that means you gave the government a no interest loan until you actually filed your taxes.
I wonder which one of us benefits from that the most.
The government gives you, yeah, government ain't giving me an interest-free loan. Okay, cool. Now I'm mad. Like,
That seems
Yeah,
fair.
that's
and
usually how
valid.
people feel near end of March, beginning of April. That sounds right par for the course.
I am
My
straight up
usual
grumpy cat right now.
we're kind of like a little bit like there's not a lot of time left before tax filings actually due, but that's the like my usual recommendation to people is try and get the filing for the paperwork done early because you don't have to pay until April 15th. So the due date for the payment is April 15th. Paperwork you can file back in, February as soon as you get all of your tax forms.
Yeah.
So that way
And if
you
anything, it's
know
usually
what's
better
going to
because
happen.
then, yeah, because then you can plan for however much you might need to pay as opposed to getting slammed 3 days before you owe thousands on thousands of dollars, perhaps, and then be like, wait, what? And now you have 3 days to pay it as opposed to a month and a half.
Exactly.
All right. So I think that's all the items that we wanted to discuss. Patrick, did you have anything else that you wanted to that we didn't cover that you wanted to bring up?
Um, with the timing and due lines, going back to the forming an entity and why it's probably not the best idea for judges to try and form the entity. Because if you create an entity that would give you a tax benefit, it also has a separate tax filing deadline. Because the entity deadlines are all due in March if you have an entity like an S corp. Um, so that would be due in March that you'd have to file a tax return for the entity and then issue yourself a tax form from the entity um, that you would need for your own personal taxes if you're trying to do a judge conglomerate. Uh, Bright side is at least if you're doing a single member LLC, that means it's an LLC that you're the only one who owns it. It's by default disregarded for tax purposes and just reported on your Schedule C on your personal taxes um, for that. So wanted to just kind of touch back to that section. And then also, if you need tax help, I mentioned VITA related to that, related to the VITA program. So United Way offers free tax preparation software that can do the federal and all states. It's kind of offered through the VITA program. You can do like a self-prepare online. The income limit for it changes each year. So there's going to be a hard and fast income limit. It's free or you can't do it. It doesn't like try and upsell you and be like, well, you made too much money, so now you have to pay us $100. No, it just is free or it doesn't let you file. That this year is $89,000 is the income limit for that. And that lets you file your federal and all states that you would need to file. So if you want to do the work and learn each state, all the states are available through that software for free if your income is $89,000 or lower.
I mean, I know judges do like to look through complicated stacks of paperwork to try and understand how things work. So,
I mean, the tax code's not really any more complicated than the comprehensive rules. So,
Okay, I'm blown away.
Yeah, it's going to take a little bit of digesting. I'm so mad right now.
I'm gonna go back and listen to this episode so I can hear, Bryan slowly short circuit as he gets angrier about tax code.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to how much silence there was after every sentence. Like, just the more gaps in silence is the ever increasing rage that's building in people right now.
Jokes on the listeners, all that silence gets edited out. Bah ha ha.
Not this time, buddy.
Oh crap, you're gonna go back in and add quiet time.
Yes.
All right, Patrick, thank you very much for being on and educating us and man, just dropping torts left and right, or making me feel as I've been torted against on that last little bit. I don't actually know if I'm using the word right.
Yes, you are.
I've been torted upon. So is there anything that you want to plug or anybody that you want to shout out to before we go ahead and end the show?
No, my only plug shoutouts are the volunteers who do the VITA and TCE because they are tax nerds who just give up their weekends for fun to do taxes.
It's sort of like judging in the sense, right? We're rules nerds that give up our weekend to help people. Okay,
I don't know why so many judges are involved in the legal profession and tax professions.
It does seem like a lot. There seems to be a lot of overlap. All right, Patrick, again, thank you very much for coming out and explaining all this stuff to us and our listeners, and hopefully folks will be able to apply some use to this. And it might be too late to do estimated taxes for this year, but maybe next year, shrug emoji. And definitely they'll be able to know what they need to record this upcoming year to take advantage of all the deductions that they are entitled to.
Yeah. And
again, not legal advice.
Yes, back to the beginning.
Right,
not legal advice.
Well, not legal advice. Please talk to your local people.
And not only that, and I know it was kind of mentioned, but let's be really super explicit about this. We're recording this in March of 2026. You could be listening to this at some point in time in the future, 3, 4, 5, 6 years from now, and maybe some part of what we're talking about has changed materially and significantly to how you relate to taxes. So if that's the case, please make sure before you act on anything in this that you validate the information that you're getting here. Cool? Everybody good?
Go
ahead.
I want to make a quick correct. So I only ever got to L1. I double checked with Dan, who was doing the certification. So I only ever got to L1. I couldn't remember because we were on the process to possibly get to L2, and then I never actually did. I just wasn't judging enough.
Fair enough.
I enjoyed playing. I got to 3-for-1 myself in a tournament. That was fun.
Awesome.
Did you know there's a Chandra that says it cannot be countered, and if you force of negation, it still cannot be countered?
Oh. Oh, buddy.
Oh, we've all been there.
Oh, buddy.
Awesome.
Oh, no. That's so tortful.
So several times tonight, before I close out and go to the outro, we did mention that there are 50 states, and just, for completionist purposes, we should mention all 50 states. So we have Alabama and Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, and Connecticut, and more. Delaware, Florida, Georgia, and Hawaii. No, never mind. I can do that some other time. It's like
I thought you were going
if
full
you're gonna do it,
yakko
at least
here.
do the Animaniacs version of the
Yes!
song.
no. I
Full
learned.
yakko,
I learned
let's
it,
go.
No, I learned it before the Animaniacs. Then that's
Yeah,
my version.
Charles learned the song. When there were
Back
only
in the Stone
13
Ages.
colonies.
Yes. Okay. All right. That's our episode. What do we do for the next show? Well, let's face it. In the never-ending cycle of nonsense that is magic in the modern era, we expect to be talking about our third release notes episode for the year. Folks, it's March, for freaking crying out loud. Okay, but we do have a little bit of a time lapse here where there's 3 weeks between when we record this and when we'd probably record that, so we might sneak something else in. We're still working through that, but in all likelihood, you'll hear us for release notes for Secrets to Strixhaven, so hey, that'll be great. Until then, you can send us an email at judgecast@gmail.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Blue Sky at judgecast.bsky.social, and on Twitter at JudgeCast. Don't forget to check out our show notes for these links and more, including our YouTube channel, where you can find this podcast and our L1 Essentials series. While you're at it, hop onto our Discord server for judges new and old, fans, and anyone who supports the judging community. I'm Charles Feather, and I keep it fair.
I'm Marcos Sanchez, and I keep it fun.
And I'm Bryan Perlman, and I keep all my quarters the same size.